Qatar has an accommodation problem. The desert country is on the hook for 3 million World Cup fans, and so far it's failing to meet demands for housing. The problem is Qatar is a small country, so there isn't enough hotels for World Cup fans. Previous host nations for the FIFA World Cup also experienced challenges with visitor accommodation, but none as serious as Qatar's. A lack of accommodation in Qatar is problematic because you need to prove you have a place to stay in Qatar before you can even enter the country. For every World Cup fan who wants to visit Qatar, they need two things: a World Cup ticket and a hayya card. Getting a ticket may not be too difficult, but getting a hayya card could be difficult in specific circumstances. To get the hayya card, you have to apply for it, but you can't complete the application without proof of accommodation in Qatar. So the accommodation shortage in Qatar can be a problem. It could be the one thing keeping you from watching the players fight it out in any of the 8 stadiums Qatar built for the World Cup. While there is the option to lie, your hayya card status can be revoked at any time if the organizers find out that you don't have a place to stay in Qatar. And since you need to show a hayya card and a match ticket before you enter the stadium, you won't be able to get in even if you are physically in Qatar. You would have to find a hotel or accommodation, register for the hayya card again, and wait for approval before entering. By then the games will be over and you'll be holding a worthless piece of cardboard. To make things a little more difficult, you have to book your Qatar accommodation through FIFA. World Cup fans are expected to get a hotel through a website called the Qatar Accommodation Agency 2022, which encapsulates all the accommodation options in Qatar. Complicating the efforts of early accommodation planning is the fact that Qatar blocked World Cup fans from booking any accommodation. Qatar booked 80% of the accommodation in Qatar until further notice earlier in the year. FIFA and Qatar did this to stop price gouging, safeguarding hotel prices to ensure they remained cheap. The opposite happened. As the World Cup neared, plane tickets and hotel prices skyrocketed. Further restrictions had to be imposed. One-night stays for World Cup fans were banned. The reasoning was Qatar had to reduce short trips and free up rooms for large groups. Only group stays for a certain amount of days, for example 2 days, will be allowed, was what they said in January. Come July 2022, a few months before the World Cup, the only rooms available were the ones with a minimum 7-day stay period. The real reason Qatar blocked World Cup fans from booking their hotel rooms was because they knew they didn't have enough hotel rooms for everyone. Qatar had wanted to secure hotel rooms for the teams participating in the World Cup, their sponsors, royal guests, VIPs, FIFA officials, as well as fans who had paid hefty prices for the expensive hospitality packages. Now that Qatar's Supreme Council had taken enough rooms, they slowly released thousands of unoccupied rooms to the public on October, a month before the World Cup started in November 20th. Qatar had promised 130,000 rooms per night on tournament days, which is an abysmal number, considering there were over 3 million match tickets sold, while each match ticket holder was entitled to bring 3 more people for free if necessary. Many hotels, which Qatar had started building since 2010 after they won the bid for the World Cup, were still unfinished. At least half a dozen accommodations, including 5-star hotels, were still unbuilt in the same month when the World Cup was about to begin. FIFA executives, which Qatar had been keen to please, had to be told their 5-star hotels had not been built yet 48 hours before the World Cup began. FIFA executives had to be sent to an alternative hotel, a dry hotel, which meant it couldn't serve alcohol. Dozens of cranes, diggers, and roadworks could be seen close to unfinished skyscrapers. Many migrants could be seen toiling away at building sites. Qatar couldn't finish construction in time for the World Cup. On the other hand, there were some places they managed to finish. One of them were the fan villages. Fan villages are one of the options for accommodations at the World Cup. However, these fan villages are horrible. They were just rows and rows of portable cabins which resembled long shipping containers from the air. For fans who managed to book or find a place in one of these fan villages, a different problem emerged. Some fan villages were unfinished. Yes, those shoddy tents in the desert or the egg-shipping containers turned portable cabins at $200 per night with shared bathrooms had not been completed yet. Fans were essentially sold accommodations for buildings that didn't really exist. Frustrated fans tried calling the ones arranging the accommodations, but the answering machine kept saying, "The system is under maintenance, please call back." So they were stuck without a place to stay. Qatar obviously shifted the blame to their construction companies. At the end, the Supreme Council was forced to give these World Cup fans a full refund and promised their new accommodations would be free of charge. For the ones who did get a cabin in the completed fan villages, they had differing levels of luck. The lucky ones had simple beds, small showers, brown water coming out from the tap, cramped toilets, hot tin can rooms, and fans and air conditioners that were so loud they stopped you from sleeping. The unlucky ones didn't even have a place to shit. Showers were clogged. Forget toilet paper. Some camps had no toilets for miles. Guards won't even let fans use toilets because they were still building it. It was as if there were still a few weeks left until the World Cup tournament started. Worse still was that the camps were in the desert, which meant it was hot even with the fans and air conditioners.
Welcome to my crib. So it's pretty basic, 2 single beds, and the ground felt a bit bumpy, so I had a little inspection and yep, that is sand underneath. There was electricity and the toilet. Unfortunately, this area didn't have any toilet paper, so we had to go searching for that. I would maybe advise letting the water run for a bit before you brush your teeth. Fan though, but at this point it just felt like it was pushing hot air around. Bit more of a walk around and it still felt slightly unfinished considering there was 2 days before the World Cup. The staff assured us it would all be open in time.
The accommodations in Qatar were compared to the Fire Festival, hosted by a now disgraced influencer who had promised great accommodations and parties but failed to deliver in the end. Qatar is the same. It overpromised and underdelivered. Fans were shocked when they arrived and saw the conditions of their temporary homes that had traces of sawdust and water all over the floor. Fans had arrived to their accommodation to find the place was still being put together. Some parts of the fan village looked like an unfinished construction site. There were signs that the cabins were only recently built. Many took to social media to complain about the situation. Qatar's accommodation agency, the supposed official supplier of a place to stay in the World Cup, is trying to make at least 130,000 rooms available for all 28 days of the World Cup. Qatar still had accommodation problems even with the fan villages, so they had to get creative and rented 2 luxury cruise ships and docked them on Doha's port for the entirety of the tournament. However, these rooms are quite expensive and they cost $600 and can reach up to $2,800 per night. Qatar, as it neared the World Cup, added a 3rd cruise ship to provide more accommodation for World Cup fans. There was also the option of staying in caravans for $100 per night, with the most expensive ones going for $850 per night. Qatar had its limits, especially when it came to accommodation, and it appears the desert country already knew about them beforehand. In addition to the free transport across the buses and metro lines within the country, Qatar also planned competitively priced airplane transport from neighboring countries. What this means is Qatar expected World Cup fans to stay in neighboring countries if they couldn't find hotels in Qatar. Fans can choose to find and stay in hotels in Dubai, Jeddah, Kuwait, Muscat, Riyadh, which are cities located in countries outside of Qatar, while fans wait for the World Cup matches to begin. While applying for the Hayya card, there's an option to bypass the accommodation requirements by choosing a matchday visit pass. With this pass, you can visit Qatar for 24 hours. So all you have to do is book a hotel in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and stay there. Then on match day, you can get on a plane and fly to Doha, Qatar, where the World Cup matches are taking place. Once you're there, you can use your Hayya card to access Doha's free public transport to get to the stadium. Then once the game ends, you can fly back to your hotel in Dubai on the same day. The catch is, it's going to cost you. Matchday shuttle planes start at $258 for an economy ticket, reaching up to $998 for business class tickets. You will be able to avoid Qatar's accommodation shortage crisis by choosing to visit only on match days and accessing cheaper hotel prices in another country like Saudi Arabia. However, you'll have to suffer from the plane ticket prices and the jet lag you'll have to bear every time you want to see players on the World Cup field on match day. Qatar's accommodation problems are appalling. The FIFA World Cup should have been the moment Qatar showed its best self off to the world. Qatar was supposed to wow guests and make a lasting impression and benefit their economy for decades to come. But so far, all they've done is stir up resentment in the worst ways possible. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.